Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that violence that's engulfed Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal over the past few days could lead to serious food and medicine shortages in the country in the coming weeks. This comes at a time when the pandemic and the measures we have had to take to contain the spread of the coronavirus have had a detrimental impact on business in our social systems. To discuss what is driving the looting and where we went wrong with our social sector systems, we are now joined by senior researcher at the Center for Social Development in Africa, Professor Lauren Graham. Prof, thank you for joining us here on SABC News. We certainly do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you've conducted a study, and I'm not sure at this point if it was in lieu of what's currently happening at this time, or it was something that was sort of always just kind of bubbling under. Talk to us about some of the findings in the report that was indeed conducted, and maybe talk to us about the time frames and what exactly you were studying at that time, because it's quite significant as we speak right now.
So we're actually hosting a conference right now dealing with all of these issues, and the timing of what's happening on the ground now is completely coincidental.
Wow.
But timely that we are actually hosting this conference now when this is happening. And we're dealing with a number of questions about poverty and inequality, looking at how the pandemic has deepened the fault lines. And that people continue to be excluded from the mainstream of society, and then looking at what are the innovations and changes that we need to make to ensure that we are addressing those exclusions, addressing the needs of vulnerable groups, and fundamentally shifting the poverty and inequality fault lines that we see, not just in our country, but the world over. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has really highlighted how those fault lines continue to shape society and how unsustainable that is.
Yeah,
and so we'll be looking at a number of interventions that can address those issues.
And it's really interesting that this is all coincidental. I mean, you know, this is something I've always said, you know, that in a society where with such huge gaps in terms of the equality gaps are so big, is so unsustainable, and perhaps this is what we're seeing. This is this thing that has been kind of brewing under. I mean, you know, I've heard some people saying that, you know, we talk about the fact that this is harmful to the economy, yes, but some people say, you know, even when things are good, this economy that you speak of, some people feel very excluded from it, and I wonder how we, you know, and perhaps this isn't on the hands of government and you know, what to do to deal with this particular issue, that there are some people that are feeling, and I suppose the term could be used, resentful, in that, you know, they're pretty much excluded from this so-called society and this brand SA and this economy that we speak of, and one wonders how we then kind of you know, deal with that so that we don't see another situation like this occurring. I mean, I wonder if this is something that, you know, that your study has kind of, you know, looked into.
So absolutely. I think what we're going to be covering over the next 4 days really looks at the multiple ways in which we need to intervene. There is no silver bullet that's going to address the fault lines that we see.
Yeah.
It requires collaborative effort. We have to have a social system that works for people, and that includes expanding social protection. We just had an amazing lecture by Professor Armando Barrientos, and he was speaking about how we need to ensure that our social protection systems are not just protecting people through consumption shortfalls in the short term, as we have seen over the COVID-19 pandemic, but are really fostering investments in human capital so that we are including all groups in society and ensuring that nobody is left behind. So that has to do with our social sector strengthening, but that's just cash. We also need to ensure that we've got welfare services that are working, and that we've got social development services that are working, that people's productive capacity is supported so that they can continue to engage in sustainable livelihoods, and seek a better future for themselves and their families. So it happens at community level, it happens at local service delivery level, but we also have to have government interventions that ensure that the fabric of society and the policies that need to be in place for this to work are in place.
Yeah, certainly, Prof. The issue of, and I suppose it's causing an impact to the issue of education, literacy, and household income. When it comes to poverty and inequality, that certainly then needs to be addressed. And I wonder where one does indeed then begin. I mean, I would assume that in your findings, in your report, that you were able to kind of see, right, this is exactly the problem area, and this is where we begin in terms of addressing it.
Well, so many problem areas, and so many of them intensified over the last 18 months. I mean, if we think about the education backlog that we're seeing because of school closures, we see unemployment deepening because of what's happening in our economy and businesses closing as a result.
Prof, let me just come in here. I'm sorry to disturb you. We just have some news coming in from Durban. Please stay on the line with us.